Good evening. Thank you all for being here tonight. And most importantly, thank you for your interest in the work of Fay Jones in great architecture and in historic preservation of great architecture. As Corey mentioned, my name is Kenneth Piley, and this is my business partner and wonderful wife, Chloe Pastello. I'm a licensed architect, and Chloe is a very talented architectural designer. Our company is called Catalpa Architects, and we are based in Fayetteville. We are graduates of the Fay Jones School of Architecture, and we are also volunteers with the E Fay Jones Conservancy, which was founded in 2024 by Jonathan Thorncrown. Our third project team member is Dan Rickards, a licensed architect and laser scanning expert. He's currently taking a much-needed vacation out west and is focusing on his other hobby, which is astrophotography. So this presentation tonight will walk you through a project that we recently completed, which was an effort to create a comprehensive laser scan of one of E Fay Jones's largest and most elaborate residences, the Orville Faubus House, which was originally designed in 1965 and completed in 1967. This project was made possible by the generosity of Jonathan Formanek, who is the current owner of the Faubus House, as well as through a grant by the Department of Arkansas Heritage, which is funded by a 1/8 conservation tax amendment 75. Our talk should be about 45 minutes in total, with some time at the end for any questions. We're going to first tell you a bit about why we decided to undertake this project, and then give you a little biographical context around the individuals involved in the creation of this building. We will then be taking you through a brief virtual tour of the house, and we'll discuss the architectural philosophy and principles evident in the design. Lastly, we will show you a demo of the LiDAR scan that we created of the house, as well as tell you a bit about the process we went through in making. So the goal of this undertaking is to make the architecture of Fay Jones more accessible, especially because the majority of his work is residential. And these are typically private residences that are not open to the public. So we sought to also create a historical document which captures the house in all this detail as a reference for architects, future researchers, and historians. The term we're using to describe this process is digital preservation. The original motivation behind this undertaking came from a story that emerged from the tragic fire that burned at Notre Dame Cathedral in Paris on April 15, 2019. It is well known that the cathedral burned for over 15 hours, resulting in catastrophic destruction of its roof and main spire, as well as many of its windows and priceless interior elements. It is not as well known, however, that digital preservation played a critical role in the reconstruction efforts for the lost portions of the cathedral. Beginning in 2010, Dr. Andrew Talon, an architectural historian and professor at Vassar College, began the process of carefully documenting every detail down to a tolerance of a few millimeters using laser scanning. Dr. Talon sadly passed away in 2018, shortly before the fire, but his foresight proved to be an invaluable contribution to architectural and world history. Fay's homes, in particular, are also vulnerable. Due to the use of natural materials such as wood, fire remains the principal looming threat to the legacy of Fay Jones. A particularly relevant example is the Adrian Fledger House, designed by Jones and completed in 1956. Beginning in 1973, former President Bill Clinton lived at the house during his time as a law professor at the University of Arkansas. Despite having been placed on the National Register of Historic Places in 2013, it was tragically lost to fire of unknown origins in 2017. More recently, one of Fay's earlier designs, the Burdick House of 1950, which is located near Razorback Stadium in Fayetteville, was completely disfigured as it was renovated and converted into an Airbnb, no longer recognizable as a Fay Jones design. Once a work of architecture such as this is lost, it is erased forever. So this is why we think digital preservation is important. Firstly, to create a quantitatively accurate resource for usage in the event of potential renovations and repairs, and in a worst case scenario, to capture this architecture before it falls into the wrong hands or is destroyed by yellows. So now we're going to give you a little bit of background about the individuals involved in this building. Firstly, the architect and then the client. So the architect for this project, as you know, was E Fay Jones. E Fay Jones was born in Pine Bluff, Arkansas in 1921. He grew up in El Dorado where his father ran a small restaurant. Growing up, Jones loved building things from salvage lumber and packing crates. As a boy, he built an elaborate treehouse for himself, complete with a working brick fireplace and operable roll-up doors and screens. The galvanizing moment in Fay's life and career came in 1938 during a visit to the movie theater adjacent to his family's restaurant. Showing in the theater was a short color film by Popular Science featuring the recently completed Johnson Wax headquarters in Racine, Wisconsin, designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. Fay explore about a futuristic visionary architecture and is quoted as saying, "Architecture took on a new meaning." From this moment forward, Fay knew that he wanted to be an architect. As there was yet no architecture program available at the University of Arkansas, Jones chose instead to study civil engineering, seeing it as being the next closest option. With war looming on the horizon in 1941, Jones joined the Navy as an airplane pilot. He was eventually posted to San Francisco and to the Pacific Theater. At the war's end in 1945, Jones returned to Arkansas to find that the university was now offering a new program, architecture. He graduated in the first class of 5 people in 1950 at the age of 29. He would go on to receive his master's degree at Rice University, followed by a few years of teaching at the University of Oklahoma from 1951 to 1953. It was there that he met the enigmatic architect and educator, Bruce Scott, who greatly influenced Fay and ultimately facilitated his introduction to Frank Lloyd Wright. Jones would go on to visit Wright at one of his famous Easter gatherings in 1953 at Aliesta West in Scottsdale, Arizona, during which he would receive an invitation to work for Wright. Over the next year, he would work on Wright's only built tower, the Price Tower, in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Upon returning to Arkansas, Jones kept in touch with Wright until his death in 1958. Jones would remain on the faculty at the University of Arkansas for the remainder of his career and would go on to win the American Institute of Architects Gold Medal for his work in 1990, 52 years after seeing the film about the Johnson Wax headquarters in that little theater in El Dorado. Now we're going to talk a little bit about the client for this project. Orville Faubus was born in 1910 and was the 36th governor of Arkansas. He was born in Madison County and raised in a modest cabin. His father was a self-educated farmer and a fervent opponent of capitalism. In his youth, Orville attended Commonwealth College near Mena, which was a radical socialist labor school aimed at combining education with cooperative community. As a young man, Faubus served in World War II as an Army intelligence officer, completing 5 major campaigns in Europe, including the Battle of the Bulge. At age 28, Faubus entered politics, joining the Democratic Party. He held 6 terms as governor, remaining in this position longer than any other person to date. Orville Faubus is infamous for his role in the integration crisis in 1957 Central High School in Laura. This event received negative attention across the nation, and today we look back at Faubus' decisions with regret and disgust. Despite these events, however, Faubus remained relatively popular, with the majority of Arkansans viewing him as moderate. He went on to serve as governor for another decade until leaving office undefeated in 1967. He left office with hopes of expanding his career into a Senate run. With this in mind, he commissioned the design and construction of a palatial estate in Huntsville for hosting dignitaries and politicians. For this task, he commissioned a talented young architect associated with the University of Arkansas, E Fay Jones. Ultimately, Faubus' Senate bid did not materialize, as his life after the governorship was beset with hardship and misfortune. In 1969, only 2 years after the completion of the house, he and his first wife, Alta, divorced. In 1976, his only child passed away due to an overdose at age 37. Faubus's financial fortunes declined after he left office as well, and after several unsuccessful attempts to reclaim the governorship, he eventually took the position as a general manager for Dogpatch USA, an Ozarks-themed amusement park located in Newton County. He was eventually forced to sell the house in 1989 in order to pay off his debts. We are now going to discuss some of the architectural principles embodied in the design of the house, as well as take a look at a virtual tour and see what the principles look like when built. The house is situated in a location east of Huntsville known as Governor's Hill. This property was named as such as it was previously owned by the 8th governor of Arkansas, Isaac Murphy, who famously voted against secession from the Union in 1861, despite enormous pressure from his peers. Construction began in the summer of 1965 and was complete by July of 1967. The house dramatically straddles the edge of a 30-foot block and was placed here in order to provide an unobstructed view to downtown Huntsville directly to the west. The concrete foundation of the house is anchored on the solid rock. In total, the house is 7,350 square feet. It is very long and proportionately narrow at 216 feet from north to south end. The entire house is designed on a modular grid, which is 32 inches by 32 inches. This dimension of 32 inches is quite smart because it works with typical construction materials, such as plywood sheets, and with the spacing of wall studs at 16 inches on center. 32 inches also multiplies easily to units of 4, 8, 12, and 16 feet on whole or half grid increments. Many of the interior doors of the house are exactly 32 inches wide and are located directly in line with the grid. This house is an example of organic architecture, which was a term coined by Frank Lloyd Wright. Some of the qualities of organic architecture are the use of natural materials, the integration of a building with its surroundings, and the blurring of boundaries between interior and exterior spaces. You also see a subtle Japanese influence in the design, and both Wright and Jones had an affinity for and inspiration from traditional Japanese architecture. This house even features 2 pairs of rice paper screen doors. In addition to creating a LiDAR scan, we also created a 3D virtual tour of the house using an Insta360 panoramic camera. This was a completely separate process from the LiDAR scan, and the reason we created this additional documentation comes down to the intended uses for each. The LiDAR scan is primarily intended to be a documented record, and will offer high-quality data for architects, researchers, and future historians. The virtual tour, on the other hand, is more for the general public to be able to experience this building in high resolution with ease and in a more familiar format. When considered together, these 2 forms of documentation create a nearly complete picture of the house as it is today. We are now going to take you on a quick trip through the Faubus House virtually and highlight some of the key spaces and design features of the house. But right now we are pulling up into the front of the Faubus House in Huntsville. And as you'll notice, the house does not contain garage, but rather a carport or porte cochere, but it appears to be an extension of the main roof of the house, resting on stone pillars. You will notice here that there is no visible front door upon first approach. They would often hide the main entry in order to provide a sense of possession and privacy. You also notice here the unique detailing of the eaves. Fay did not use gutter on his houses, and instead used a combination of angled fascia and copper drip edge. Here's a detail of what that looks like.
That sculpture's beautiful. The sculpture piece, the neighbor is an artist, and she did that out of an old log she found on the property. And then there's a face up towards the top in the center, kind of an old, what I would call a mountaineer type little face. She's got 2 or 3 different pieces of art around the grounds. Yeah, that was installed with. Well, I think this one's in there probably almost a year by now. She's done a birdhouse that looks much like the house. And I think I found 9 openings. There's 9 separate little birdhouses.
So we've thawed out now, and so we're going to continue ahead. If we need to, we may jump ahead to laser scan and come back to the virtual tour so that can load a little bit more. But these things happen when you're streaming something online, so just have to bear with us if you don't mind.
What's the front door there?
So we're not quite to the front door just yet. We're going to see it be revealed around the corner here in a moment. But at this vantage, we were actually underneath the carport. And you're actually presented, if you look above your head, with a little hint of what is to come on the interior. This would be an example of how Fay tries to dissolve the distinction between interior and exterior by extending the interior elements to the outside. So as we come around through the carport, you can now see that we have visibility to the front door, which is tucked nicely right around the side.
Excuse me, what we're looking at now, is this LiDAR?
This is not. This is that 3D panorama.
Okay.
And it's taken with an Instant 360 camera. And what we did is we created a 3D tour using the spherical images so that people could get a sense of movement through the space really easily from the point of view of a person standing.
Yes. The circles on the paving are not really there.
Those are just in the software to allow you to go from point to point.
Oh,
Part of the two of the 360 panoramas, we were going to use them through the LiDAR scanning process to colorize the scan. We went through multiple techniques trying to colorize the scan, but we will touch on that in a little bit.
Can I ask both of you to just speak up a little more? Sure. Would please.
So the front facade, which faces east, is fairly quiet and offers a somewhat modest presentation. It offers a sense of privacy as it has relatively few large exterior windows. The exterior wall materials are local fieldstone and mahogany plywood paneling, which has been stained a light orange brown. The roof is covered in cedar shingles. You can also see here the subtle Japanese influence, which is primarily visible in the low hip roofs. This modest exterior presentation will serve as counterpoint to the grand architectural orchestration that is waiting for us on the interior, and this was a theme that is found in many of Fay's houses. So we're now in the entry foyer. This is the main entry to the house, and it was the one intended to be used by the majority of visitors. This house was intended for hosting events and dinners for politicians and the well-to-do. Directly ahead of us is the sewing room, which was a room that was designed for Orville Faubus's wife, Alta. It has operable panels spacing the entry so that Alta could be made aware of who was coming and going, but could also close herself off for privacy if she wished. You may also notice that the entry is rather compact and dark. The ceilings of this location actually measure around 7 feet. This was not an accident, but was rather a technique Fay used to heighten the architectural procession using a concept called compression and release. The idea is that small makes big feel bigger, and dark makes light feel lighter. Movement through the house is organized along a 180-foot long linear axis running north to south. By walking along this axis, you can reach any part of the house. And as you do so, you feel space compressing and expanding around you. Now, as we move into the great room, we feel the surprise of an expansion of space, which is opening upward and outward toward the west. The roof and ceiling are really important for creating this architectural effect of expansion and lightness. The ceiling itself is covered in cream-colored Amasok paneling, which is made from recycled paper fiber, which is compressed under high temperature. It has a subtle texture as well as an acoustic effect. The joints in the panel are covered with the same hardwood battens which we previously saw outside in the carport.
Just to talk a little bit about the laser scan. So to talk a little bit about the laser scanning process, when we were going through the house, these panoramas were going to be used to supplement and orient based on the scan locations. And so we originally started by doing a grayscale scan because we knew this house was quite large. And so part of the process was, how are we going to reduce the amount of time to scan the house? And so the strategy was originally to do a grayscale scan and then to use some other technique to colorize the scan. And so we tried photogrammetry techniques, which is using a camera to take pictures of everything throughout the house. And then we tried to overlay that on to the point cloud. It didn't quite work. So then we tried the 360 panoramas as well. So just that was kind of a plus here. When we went through and took all the panoramas we have, this is kind of like a deliverable that we could use to present to public, regardless of if they got us the end goal with a color scan. We ended up having to scan with color to finish up and how to colorize point cloud. So we will touch a little bit more on that. Since it's loaded, we'll go back to the creation. I'll get back into the house. Go back to the laser scanning part and then go back to the seek again.
All right, so we are going to jump ship on the 3D tour, but we're gonna swim back and see if we can return to it later and float. So what we're gonna do now is we're just gonna take you guys to. We're gonna take you through the process that we followed when we completed the laser scan, and then we're gonna show you a laser scan so that you can see how it differs from the virtual tour, and also what value each of the two different techniques for documentation bring.
Is the laser scan and the LiDAR scan, are they the same?
Yes, sir. All right. So, what is LiDAR scanning? LiDAR scanning stands for light detection and ranging. LiDAR scanning is a technology that measures distances using laser pulses. By timing how long it takes for each laser pulse to bounce off an object and return, LiDAR creates a precise 3D map of an environment. It is widely used in self-driving cars, drones, archaeology, and mapping. LiDAR scanning is accurate down to a few millimeters. In order to create a thorough model, it's important to scan each space from multiple angles. This allows the scanner and software to cross-reference and triangulate each point relative to the other ones. The model that we have assembled consists of 362 scans, with a total of about 1.5 billion points. It was completed over the course of 12 weekends and several evenings of compiling and editing on the computer. The model itself is known as the point cloud, and a computer stores the geospatial coordinate of each one of these discrete points relative to an ordered point. This process was one of trial and error, which is what Chloe was referring to earlier. And we actually put multiple approaches that weren't working before finding one that eventually did. This is an example of one of the early scans that we created in black and white. Our goal was to save time by scanning the house in black and white, which is fast and compressed. We had planned on colorizing this black and white scan by using a separate process called photogrammetry, and we were thinking that this approach would save us time overall. Photogrammetry is a process by which you can create a digital 3D model by taking hundreds or even thousands of photos of a space or object. These photos can be loaded into a software which uses an algorithm to stitch them together. Unfortunately, we ran into a litany of technical challenges when we tried to combine the photogrammetry model with the point cloud, and we ultimately had to abandon this approach and go back to square one. What we ultimately chose to do was scan the house in full color, which meant a longer scan time for each particular location. The result, however, is a high-resolution color scan that is exactly what we were going for. The biggest challenge to scanning this project was not necessarily the size of the house, but the intricacy of the architecture. Fay's buildings are notorious for their detail and complexity. Much of which, as you have seen, is high over your head. For this reason, it was necessary to take multiple scans, not only at the ground level, but also at the higher ceiling elevation. This ensures that we were able to capture both the top and bottom of elements, like beams, shelves, soffits, and light fixtures.
Just a couple of notes about this process. That's a tripod that goes up to 24 feet. So we used it in the great room where the ceiling is quite tall. And then as far as the timing on scans, I believe the grayscale scans were somewhere around 2 to 3 minutes each scan. So thinking about 362 locations, 2 minutes per scan. I think the full color scans are more like 8 minutes scan. So it's 4 times as long to scan. So we were originally trying to save time, but it didn't pan out.
So Chloe will now give you a quick demo of what the point cloud looks like and how some of the features work in the point cloud software. The software gives you the ability to fly around the model, to take measurements, but even to create section boxes in order to cut the model and view it from different directions. Okay, so this is the completed and colorized point cloud. So we're hosting it online, and surprisingly, point clouds are somewhat lightweight for a lot of computers to handle. I mean, they're still very big files, but because they're simply comprised of indexed points and maybe millions or even billions of points, it's a relatively simple operation for most computers to populate scene with just points and color information. So this is an online viewer. It's called Potree. It's an open source software. And it actually lets you set the level of detail using a slider at the top. The only difference is that sometimes you have to wait a little bit longer to load it in if you put it on the highest level, which is called your point budget, and that's the first slider there at the top of the menu. So we're going to be showing it about 70% of its full resolution. But even at that resolution, this gives you a very high degree of accuracy and the ability to take very precise measurements of different elements of the house. So I guess first we'll just sort of take you around the outside of the house. We cut the house in a little bit. The whole site is surrounded by trees, and we had to decide how much of that we wanted to show. We did scan the edge of the bluff below the overhang as well. And if we were able to go back to the 3D tour, we're going to take you out on that overhang, which is 30 feet above the fourth floor below and completely cantilevered. So we were able to scan that, and we were able to scan the entire roof as well using a very 24-foot tripod. So now we'll go ahead and fly around a little bit inside.
So your scanner was never high above the house,
It was the highest of the scanner was 24 feet.
but where we just looked, we were probably 50 or 60 feet up.
That's right.
So I guess that still allows the thing to think its way what those dimensions would be. Huh?
Really what it's doing is it's just putting a point in space relative to an origin. And so once it populates an entire model with these points in their locations, you can then manipulate that in the computer and look at it from any angle. It's going to retain those relative relationships at each point.
So each scan, I think the scanner was on the surface of this balcony for multiple scans. So it was taking all the points of the railing and the roof, because it would be up higher on the tripod. It could get at a grazing angle the roof surface and the chimney. But then Dan took the scanner down to the bluff area, like below, to get the underside of the balcony as well. So when all of these are located in a computer, they snap into each other and they reference each other. And there's a process of cleaning up the scans and kind of stitching them together.
And you may actually notice if we look from the top again, and that the tops of the chimneys don't have any information there because we weren't able to get anything high enough to look down on those. But that's just a minor thing really relative to everything you could capture.
Yeah.
You will also notice that there are going to be a few stray points that are floating around the house outside, maybe above the roof a little bit, mostly around glass and mirrors. And we are still going through and manually cleaning up the point cloud. It's a pretty time-intensive process. And scanners struggle with glass and they struggle with mirrors. Anything that's going to confuse the laser emitter and receiver in terms of how far a beam has traveled before it's bounced and come back. So that's another problem of scanning a Fay Jones project, because Fay loves glass and he also uses a lot of mirrors. And he will occasionally put mirrors across from each other too. So it's a little bit of an expert level scan, and we're really thankful to have an expert scanner to walk us through it.
We also scanned the house with the furniture and the plants left throughout the house. So a lot of it is as the owner has it. But the plants themselves, to get the level of detail that you would need to represent them accurately, you would need to scan them from positions, getting really close. And so, as you can see here, there's a plant by the front, and it's not as detailed as you would see in reality. Oh yeah.
There's also a local cat that hangs around outside the house who happened to be sitting still long enough to become part of the point cloud. And so we affectionately call it our cat stand.
His name is Faubus.
You could see it had the tail. You can see his tail was switching around while the scan was going. But see, each of these squares is one point that was logged during the scan.
We'll take you through the interior of the house now in the point cloud. And again, if we can get a tour, we'll also take you through the panoramic tour as well, because one of the things that we were kind of happy about that we were able to do with the 3D tour was we were able to embed architectural details in the 3D tour so that you could click on an element like a beam or a cabinet, and you could actually see one of the original blueprint drawings of that element. So hopefully that's loaded. We'll be able to show you that after we look at the point cloud a little bit more. So we get to imagine that we're a ghost and we can go through walls. And now we're inside.
The view you guys saw earlier. This is the view that you guys saw earlier in the great room. Let me see if I get the camera to come up.
Is the furniture still original with the house?
The majority of the furniture is, and it was designed by Fay. So here you can see some of the intricate stonework of the chimney. The house actually has 4 chimneys, or excuse me, has 2 chimneys, but 4 fireplaces, 2 double-sided fireplaces. Each of the hearths has unique designs. So this one is sort of an arch design, and on the other side, there's yet another design. And then on the other wing of the house, where the main primary bedroom is, there are 2 additional chimneys. Yeah, so we can also show you one of the really great functionalities with this point cloud viewer, which is the ability to cut section boxes and to inspect different parts of the house from the outside. So Chloe's going to go ahead and place a section box, and then we're going to drag it down and show you a cut of the floor plan of the entire house. What you do is you drag in one of these boxes that's called a clipping box or a section box. And once you've placed it, you can drag these different color balls in order to extend the axes of each direction, X, Y, Z, in order to create the extent of the section box. And anything that's within the section box, we're going to show, and anything that's outside of it, we're going to have it clip so that it disappears. And it takes just a minute to get it set up, but you can really position it wherever you want or have it show you any area of the house that you want in isolation. So now Chloe lowered the top of the clipping box, and now we have sort of bird's eye view of all the rooms of the house from above. So this is a really useful tool because it makes it really easy to take the dimensions of the sizes of any of the rooms or the thicknesses of any of the walls that you aren't able to see from the outside. And it gives you a more holistic understanding of the overall design. So Poetry also has a series of measurement tools as well. Earlier today, we were having an issue with it loading, and it looks like it's not going to load right now either. So we'll have to demo that at our next opportunity.
Yeah, the ideal situation is if this tool is working, we could measure any location in this model and get down to the millimeter an exact dimension, but it doesn't seem to be working. So, for example, you could measure the stool, or you could measure, the stair step heights of the door, just any of these elements. So it's ideally a really accurate artifact for people to study and learn from if they wanted to. So there should be a dimension between those 2 points.
There normally is. I actually referenced the measuring tool and took hundreds of measurements when I was drawing up a floor plan of the house. And it does work, but kind of depends on your internet speed and if you're able to load in the full resolution of the model. So, okay, so yeah, you guys have,
like we have 10 minutes.
you guys have any questions about the scanning process, anything related to that?
I was curious, and you were touching on how to get measurements. Like if somebody wanted to use this to, let's say, build that coffee table, let's just say that. those red dots you put on there, you put those wherever you want them manually, and then the computer automatically gives you the measurement in between there.
So the question was the process of taking measurements, how it works, and if you would be able to theoretically take measurements of something like a coffee table or one of the items in the house like that. And you can, and we've actually used it to take hundreds of measurements of the house already. There's something that is not loading correctly with the model at the moment. It may be that when you host it online, you have to do something, maybe set a setting differently when you're uploading it. But we have been able to do that, and you are able to make very precise measurements. And so we're going to make sure that we figure out how to make that available when we have this posted for people to view on the internet, which is what our eventual goal is with this. And actually, this is currently streaming from online. So we will be sharing it with everybody shortly.
The way that this open source program works, it's called Poetry. It processes the point cloud into it's called an octree using an algorithm. So it's optimizing the display. Like all of the points, the file itself is 48 gigabytes, but it streams in based on where you're located in there and also based on how close you are. And it will remove everything else that's not on the screen. So it's using an algorithm to optimize that, but it does require, I guess a somewhat speedy internet connection to like be able to add more detail in these areas where you can see there's the bigger points being approximated.
Yeah, normally when you've loaded it in at full detail, it's about twice as much resolution as what you're seeing right now. So all these little squares are about half the size, and they're double.
File itself, the point cloud itself in the raw format is terabytes in size. So this was optimized from that point as well.
And so we at some point we will be hosting this on the Conservancy website. When somebody's looking at that from their home computer, will how it works and how it shows depend on their computer and their internet speed? So they may have issues at home. So it's more based on their computer than where it's being hosted.
Yeah, so the question was, will the computer and the home internet speed of different people who are trying to view this online affect the performance of the point cloud? And unfortunately, it will. You don't have to necessarily have the fastest computer in the world, and you don't have to have the fastest internet in the world either. We typically are able to run it on our laptop, so you don't even necessarily need a desktop computer. But you need, and I don't know what exact internet speed is recommended. It might be something I could find out and we could share with people when we send this out. But it does help to have a faster internet connection and a reasonably new computer.
So you're saying that say this place burnt, an architectural firm could take this and actually redo it down to the millimeter.
That's right.
Does that imply you could generate a construction drawing from one of these scans? Is that
There are a lot of industry professionals who do use these scans to take as-built. And so instead of sending out some interns with clipboards and having them measure every wall and locate every pipe and every drain and every outlet, you can send in a team to scan. And the gentleman who provided our scan is on such a team at a large architecture firm, PD2 and Rogers. And what they do for their process is they will go and scan a large facility, and then they will bring that model in-house. They'll clean up the point cloud, and then they will put it into a BIM modeling program, building information modeling such as Revit or ArchiCAD. And then you can model to the scan and work very accurately that way. You can't yet directly convert the scan into a BIM model because it just doesn't know enough. It's real out of almost a dumb thing because it's just points. It's a ton of points and it gives you a very accurate picture, but ultimately it's only points and colors. And so there's still a step taken where you have to model something yourself to the scan as a reference, but it still is much faster than going and taking an as-built, for example.
Yeah. But you used words like pipes and drains, or I could say studs. How it can't capture those things because it can't see them, can it?
In certain commercial spaces, it can capture things that are in the ceiling cavity, like behind a drop ceiling, for example. But yes, if something is hidden from sight, such as if the pipes are cast in the slab or in the walls, you're not going to be able to get those. You will be able to get the locations of all the faucets and drains and outlets and fixtures and switches exactly where they are.
Yeah.
And most importantly, you're going to get any potential inaccuracies in the building. So if a wall has skewed, or if a roof has sagged, or if a foundation is settled, you're going to get that very accurately picked up in a scan. Whereas you might not necessarily be able to notice as well if you're taking a manual as-built.
Is the house a private residence now, or is it a B&B, or what?
The house is currently a private residence. It's owned by Jonathan Formanek and Andrew Whitmore, who founded the conservancy. And they have opened up the house recently for tours, and you can book tours online on the weekends and I believe some weeknights through the E Fay Jones Conservancy's website. And we're going to show a QR code if anybody wants to get a link to that website.
There are also some brochures back here on the snack table of the house, and the website is listed there for you, or Facebook, for some other information about the house.
So I did have a few acknowledgments that I wanted to mention in concluding everything. And I wanted to say that we consider this project to be a springboard for a larger project to document more Fay's work and have hopes to scan more of this project. We currently have tentative arrangements made to scan the Brothers House, which was designed in 1953 and is located in Fayetteville near Razorback Stadium. The house was recently renovated by one of Fay's apprentices, Dave McKee, and his family. We would like to give an enormous thanks to a few individuals and groups who made this project possible. Firstly, the Arkansas Department of Heritage, because we did receive a grant to perform this work. And then that grant was matched in kind by Jonathan Formanek and Andrew Whitmore, who are the current owners of the Faubus House, and who have generously allowed us to invade their private personal space weekend after weekend in order to complete this project. We want to also thank Rhonda Craig here, who is with us tonight, and she is an encyclopedia of knowledge about both the Faubus House and property, as well as about Fay Jones. And she has facilitated many opportunities and assisted us every step of the way. And we want to give a shout out to our yard partner, Dan Richards, who, without whom none of this would be possible. We want to thank Dan for his patient determination to complete the project to a high level of quality, and for his willingness to donate his time and energy to bring it over the finish line. There it is. So if anybody wants to go directly to the Conservancy's website, you can just take a photo of this image and you can tap on the QR code and it should take you there.
Yep. The web address is efayjonesconservancy.org. Also, the grant that we had funding for the project, partial funding for the project, was funded through Arkansas Heritage. And as you can see, it was funded by your 1 cent conservation pass from Amendment 7.
I would tell you folks that if you come for a tour, I would be your tour guide. I love the house. I'd love to invite you all to come. During the months of August and September, we have Saturday and Sunday tours just a couple of weekends a month. But come October and November, we have lots of tour dates. Leaf peeping season, craft fairs, a lot of people in Northwest Arkansas. So we've got tours like Wednesday through Tuesdays and quite a lot of tour options. And then we are doing one evening tour so that we can see the house in the dark with the lights on. You know, he uses so much natural light through the daytime to decorate this house. It's fabulous to see what he's done with lighting, down lights on the stone columns and different things like that. It just turns it into a whole different place at night. So we've got one evening tour. We may schedule others. Those seem to be popular.
Do you have a website where those dates are?
Yes, this website will show you calendars and ticket prices, and you can purchase tickets directly through there.
Has the house been pretty problem-free over the years, or?
It really has. Nobody's ever really lived there very hard, not had a bunch of children. It's never been really lived in a long period of time. And so it's fabulously original. When we got the National Register of Historic Places for it, one of the things they were all fascinated at both state level and national was the fact that it was so original. So many of the other places that have applied for that same designation have had changes and updates, and ours is original. So it's really fabulous to see what Fay's done.
Yeah. And Formanek never lived there, or what?
He does live there. He lived there full time for 17 years. He bought it in 95. Lived in it 17 years full time, and then now lives there during the summer months and goes to Dallas through the winter time. And I'm fortunate enough to look after it during the winter time.
Yeah. I didn't catch it. Is it co-owned by someone else now?
The full ownership belongs to Jonathan Formanek. He and his partner, Andy Whitmore, live there and take care of it. Of course, there's some garden crews and some maintenance crews and different things like that help with it.
And Faubus only lived there for 20 years.
Well, he kind of came and went between wives. Some of the wives didn't like living in Huntsville, Arkansas. They were pastor city girls. They didn't much care living in Alta, the first wife's hometown. And so they didn't stay particularly long. So there was a lot of gaps in time where no one really was there.
But how long did Faubus actually own it?
He sold it, I believe, in 89. Isn't that what you said? Mm-hmm. And so from 67 to 89. And Jonathan Formanek is, besides Orville Faubus, Jonathan's only the third owner. So it's really only had 4 owners this whole time.
And wouldn't it have been breakfast at one point? Unfortunately, they didn't change it up. No.
They did not change it up. They did hang lace curtains and some things that didn't seem appropriate to a Fay Jones house, but nothing construction-wise was changed while they were there.
Well, the reason I asked that, the house that's up at Crystal Bridges, was having a lot of problems and the owners couldn't maintain it. And that's why Crystal Bridges got the opportunity with all that. So,
Right. We really haven't had any problems except for toilets. But those are all working at this moment. Other than that, our skylights, we have 3 wonderful skylights. We've not had any problems with those, which are generally a problem. We've had, I think Jonathan's put on 2 roofs now and chose to stick with the original materials, the cedar shakes. We are needing to repaint all the railings, which will be a big project. But nothing is compromised. Come take a look.
Yeah, it looks fabulous. I have to tell you a little story. I'm originally from Wisconsin and lived here for 40 years. And my parents came down from Wisconsin to visit frequently when I was still working. And I think this was in the late 80s. And so I'd go to work and I'd say, well, go driving around the countryside. One day I said, oh, by the way, there's a fabulous house in Huntsville. And I said it was actually owned by Orville Faubus. Well, they knew who Faubus was from the news, 1937. That's all they knew. So they went driving there and I told them, you go up the hill and you'll see it. It's a real fancy house. They drove up there and my dad's kind of nosy. So he pulled in the driveway a little and looked, kept creeping in. And finally Orville came out on the porch, waved them in and invited them in and served them coffee and donuts. So they got to see the whole house. But I haven't been there myself. I actually met John. I didn't realize he still owned the house. I'm a former Peace Corps volunteer, and so was John. And so I got to know him through our Peace Corps organization, and I believe he was also an architect himself.
He is. He is a retired architect. So spent many years in the Peace Corps.
Yeah,
He's really like.
yeah. And I didn't know he still owned it. I thought he had sold it and moved on. So I need to get over there and see it.
Thank you so much, Ian.